Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast.
Listen, do what you gotta do to keep us around, okay? Welcome to episode 12 and the season finale of Off the Cuff. I'm Matt Butler.
I'm Darren Chohan.
So it's been a while.
Yeah, what have you been doing?
Just working and stuff.
Really? I guess me too.
Well, we've been working on something big.
Yeah. We, in the last month and a half, have just filed our first Supreme Court of Canada application.
Which we're pretty excited about. Took a lot of work.
Yeah, and that took us away from this and, managing our practices in between and wanting to get out good content or at least any content, really.
And then life happens and stuff.
Yeah, so sorry. I mean, kind of, but it is what it is. We're here now, so happy to be back for sure.
Yeah, big time.
I feel a little out of practice, so hopefully this goes all right.
This is take, what, 164?
Yeah, something like that.
At this for 2 days. That's a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah, anyways. So what we thought today, what we would do is give you guys a recap of all the cool stuff we talked about all season, because we thought about getting a guest, we thought about doing new content, we thought about a whole host of things while we were planning this episode, and we thought that what might be the most impactful was to just talk about and recap everything we said, because there was a lot of information this season.
Yeah.
It was our first go at it, obviously, as you know. And, we're learning. You guys are learning alongside of us. But I think there are opportunities within the episodes that there was some really good information we shared and something that we need to not expand on, but at least remind people or listeners that maybe didn't even listen to episode 1, because that was what feels like an eternity ago.
When was that? That was a while ago.
I don't even know when we started this project, but
oh, geez. Well, yeah.
So long time ago in our world anyways. And so I think that we should just get into it and go into, episode 1. We talked about relocation. So there's been some changes, I think, right? Since we talked about it.
Yeah, relocation, because we want to really touch upon relocation, because in family law, which Darren and we both practice, it's one of the most difficult areas of law in our area of family law to litigate and even to advise clients. And we had discussed,
You're talking about that specific issue, right?
That specific issue, the relocation issue. Yeah, throughout history, it's been difficult to litigate, and then there's been some changes in both the provincial and federal legislation with regards to relocating, and we expanded on the new law and how it's going to be applied. And then since then, there have been some major ramifications. So far, there's been, I think, a few cases that have gone to the Supreme Court. Recently, the Supreme Court commented that a court of appeal in Canada had misapplied a test. So though we presented it, again, some time ago, there have been a lot of fine-tuning, because we want to make, as a justice system, we need to make sure that it works as best as it can. So there's been a lot of moving parts with the relocation.
Well, and I think when we first started talking about it, we were learning it too, because the legislation had just come out recently. And so those amendments to the act were new to us.
Yeah.
And when something's new, that means that there's no precedent. And so if you've listened along with us and understand what precedent is, that's judge-made law through the cases that they hear. And there wasn't any, because it's brand new legislation. And so finally now we're probably a year and a bit past when the new legislation has come out.
There's a good body of case law.
There's a good body of regular case law. And why we were so excited about our Supreme Court case is because that's the highest court in the country.
Right.
And so Matt and I have now are, I guess, blessed with the opportunity to even be able to get to that stage, and let alone now we're dealing with cases in our field that are talking about the mobility, the legislation, and really now what Matt said is fine-tuning and giving us lawyers a better way to interpret the legislation so that we can advise our clients better.
And it's an interesting avenue where even the court has been, I don't want to say, well, they have been misapplying certain tests. Yep. So it's not only do the public need to know about these new regulations, lawyers, judges and, Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. Everyone's learning this, and everybody's, and once you get to the Supreme Court, is to ensure, because it's going to be the law of the land, and it's to make sure that it's sort of the best decision moving forward for everybody involved. So it's fairly exciting as a family law lawyer to see these actions being taken to the highest court.
And we're excited also because more and more now we're seeing family law cases being argued at the Supreme Court.
There's been a lot.
And there's
lately.
been a lot lately,
Yeah.
all over the country. There's been some pretty high-profile British Columbia cases that have gone up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And you're seeing more and more family litigation make its way up because historically the Supreme Court of Canada deals a lot, with criminal law cases, and that's what they see for the most part, because those are the trials that happen, and then it goes all the way up. But we're seeing more and more now with family law litigation that there are nuances, and that those nuances need to be explored, and especially when the rules change so drastically like they did with the mobility stuff, the country and the provinces need guidance on what to do with that legislation, and the Supreme Court, that's their role.
Yeah.
Their role is to help the other lower courts with those tough decisions.
Yeah, and family law lawyers in Ontario I've written about this, and we can speak to it as well, is that because of the ability to work remotely now without having to actually sit in an office from 9 to 5, these relocation cases are going to come up more often because people are going to be able to live almost anywhere, whether it be in the country or in the world, to do specific jobs or employments. So you're going to have people who are going to want to move with their families, and you still have a parent that you're no longer with that still needs to be involved in the child's life. So it's going to be something, I think, in the next few years that we're going to be dealing with quite a bit.
Yeah, it's always evolving, and we've seen it in our own practices where from case to case, the dramatic differences in results. Right?
Because exactly.
Even just in the cases that we've done in the last year since we last talked about it. And it's been wild to see. So I would encourage you guys to stay tuned to the Supreme Court releases, because those are really what are going to guide us in the future. And the Supreme Court is just, their recent releases on an Ontario Court of Appeal decision. So
exactly. So
what else did we talk about?
Yeah, so episode 2, we spoke about vaccines in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a guest, Zachary Cornimage, speak to that. And it gave us a great overview about, mandatory vaccination in the workplace. And we presented case law to those effects, and then sort of the ramifications to that. And I think Zach did a great job sort of outlining that law.
And that was interesting because when we interviewed Zach, from what I remember, it was right about when the debate had just started. Right, it was right around when the vaccination problem, or I guess the vaccination requirements, were coming in, and it was really interesting for us to interview Zach at that time.
Yeah,
and now it's for us to come back and reflect on that episode and the two episodes that we did, really go to show you how, just even in a short time, things can so drastically change. Because today we're sitting here, and vaccinations in the workplace, not really even talked about much. I mean, I think it's kind of sorted itself out, and you don't hear too much, especially in the legal world. I mean, I don't practice in that area, neither do you, of course, but I haven't heard our colleagues talk about many problems with this non-vaccination thing, because I think the problem itself has kind of sorted itself out.
I would agree with that. Yeah, but it was great to hear Zach's take on it, because it doesn't just deal with what, the world was going through a year or two ago. It might be something that, in the future that may be looked at.
Well, and it's interesting because lawyers help shape the future of the province, the country, and a lot of the work that lawyers did during those mandatory vaccination hearings, during those labor arbitrations, during the human rights cases, that's the body of case law that we're left with today.
Right.
And all the work that the lawyers did, we are now going to live with going forward, and we've now created a new baseline, right?
Well, they've set precedent, like you said earlier.
Exactly.
They're precedents that we can fall back on and determine, look at how life was at the time, what was determined, and then you can sort of look at this body of case law and then determine what can be done in the future whenever anything with some sort of closeness to what we experienced in the last 2 years.
Right, because now we have effectively created a new history, right? So you go back to what it was pre-life, pre all of this craziness to today, and we have created a new world order almost, and what
a new world order. Wow.
Well, I mean, but it's the world is
over here. Yeah.
the world is different, isn't it?
No, it's true.
It's not
you're
the
right.
same.
No, you're
We're
right.
not living in the same world.
No, you're right.
People want to work from home, and they're allowed to do that now. Before it was much more taboo to do that, and there's a lot more work-life balance, and that's a lot of thanks to a lot of the work our colleagues and the lawyers and the members of the bar did.
Very
right?
true.
Because of all the unfair labor practices, all of the, all of the issues people were having, not going into work and people not wanting to be vaccinated and being allowed to work from home and opening up all of these different avenues. And that was what we explored with Zach. And it was, it's really cool to reflect back on that.
Yeah. I really enjoy those episodes.
So if you're interested, I mean, it's a historical take, but interesting. Zach presented some really good case law, some really interesting, and also that case law relied on history again.
Yeah.
From previous issues that we had with other diseases. So go take a look at those if you're interested. After we talked to Zach, we then looked at what I thought was one of our most fun topics was the neighbor disputes.
Neighbor dispute, like, it's funny. You hear about neighbor disputes and everybody thinks your yard, your dog, your garbage, and you think these little, small these disputes can really start years of extensive, expensive litigation. And we presented a couple of cases on the second episode we did for neighbor disputes, but it's not a joke. Like, we laugh about it because, like, you hear these things, you're going, we dealt with chicken coops, we dealt with tree houses that were, boats, and
What's funny though, that was and reflecting back on it, we spent like an hour or something. That was our longest episode.
It was our longest episode,
and nobody watched it.
Nobody
watched.
Can you guys watch it? We like it.
I thought it was. We put a lot of work into that episode, and nobody watched it. But that's okay, and nobody listened. But it's fine. Well, today our goal is to encourage you to go back and take a look at those episodes. They're fun episodes. And you had said there, the dog, the fence, the neighbor, whatever, right? And, since we filmed those and since we recorded those, even in-house, we've had one of the most intense neighbor disputes I've seen to date be like at a trial. Like, we've had one of our associates is at a trial on a really intense neighbor dispute.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where it was like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, 2 week. It was a
full 2 week hearing.
Yeah, and that's what these things happen. It's a dispute that two people or two neighbors or two, it could be multiple neighbors, and they just don't want to give in to any of their positions. And here we are 4 years later, and we're dealing with, what would be seen as just a minor inconvenience to another person is truly something worth, litigating to the full extent of the law. I find in this kind of dispute more so than other disputes, and we practice family law, so you're gonna laugh when I say this, but I find neighbor disputes to be sometimes more intense than like your family law cases.
Disputes. Sometimes.
Well, this one
for sure.
Sure, but we've dealt with some pretty intense family law cases. Come on, man.
Of course. But you can get to that level.
Oh yeah. Full animosity and just resentment.
It's just as combative as separation and divorce.
Okay, yeah, I'll take that. Yeah.
And what's even more wild is that they're not tied to each other, so they don't have to play nice in the sandbox.
No, and that's the thing.
Right? They don't have to be nice for the kids.
Yeah.
They don't actually have to save face. These two can just go to all out war, which is what, war, what is it good for? We talked about that, right? Absolutely nothing. But neighbor disputes, it's war. And you have clients, sometimes they call you and be like, look, I'm hiring you and I want this to be full battlefield stuff, scorch earth. And we're like, okay, pump the brakes. Well, like, let's be reasonable.
It's one of those issues, like, you can litigate against a neighbor all you want, like, and if nobody moves, you're still living next to them.
Yep. No, but litigation is not going to force somebody to move. A judge can't be like, hey, Matt, go buy a new house somewhere else.
Yeah, like, and then after you're done with that, you're going, okay, we litigated, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars litigating this.
I still have to look at you over the fence.
And like, okay, we've dealt with the issue, but like, I don't know. It neighbor disputes, like sometimes it starts with something so minute and so, like, again, it's a minor inconvenience, but it could be someone's reaction to that, and then someone's reacting to the reaction, and all of a sudden you find yourself in an 8-day trial, like the case law we presented. Yeah. It's, it can be avoided sometimes, but other times
sometimes it can't.
Sometimes it can't, and you have to sort of litigate it because there are damages. So
one thing I did want to bring up again, and I thought was one of the most important things we talked about, if you didn't listen or watch those episodes,
do it,
is the line fences stuff.
Yeah, looking into that episode, we really didn't know about the Line Fences Act and the regulations and the fence. The
fence stuff.
Yeah, the fence stuff, yeah.
No,
but it was interesting because, like, to have, where does a fence go? There are people in your municipality who can actually determine that. Yeah, you don't have to set up a fence and then all of a sudden you're going, well, that's my property. You're going, well, okay, well, this sucks. I already spent 20 grand on this fence. You actually have someone come in and go, this is where the fence could be. This is, it just works.
And this is who has to pay for it. Right? So sometimes it's shared, sometimes it's not. But what's important to know is that each municipality has a regime set up for this line fences stuff. And I mean, we just got a call the other day about a Line Fences Act, and we were actually able to give advice on this because of the work we did, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. So
that's pretty.
We're
awesome.
learning with you. You're learning, and it's great. So I think what we'll do, probably take a break here from our sponsor, and we'll get right back into it after that.
Good stuff. So now we'll discuss about the next episodes we did with they all sort of touched upon estates.
Mm-hmm. Which we found out from our statistics. Apparently people care about that stuff.
Well, you look at like what's a will and you go, I don't know, and then all of a sudden, we had Marissa on to talk about wills, and people obviously went
bananas.
This is something we should listen to and pay attention to.
And that was probably the wills and estates episode, the solicitor stuff. Was, I think, our most well-received episode.
Yeah.
And both from a listening and a viewership standpoint, and also from we actually got calls for the work because I think people realized how important that stuff is, right?
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I know my personal life, people watched the episode and they came to me and they said, oh wait, so like if I have power of attorney and that person dies, like I don't take care of their estate anymore. I go, no, unless you're an estate trustee. And they went, really? And they were like, I got to call my sister. It actually triggered some questions in people's families and the preconceived notions of, oh, I'm a power of attorney forever. No, that's not how it works.
Well, I think there's what we highlighted is that there's a fundamental misunderstanding sometimes of what you're signing up to do.
That's a great point.
Right?
Yeah.
And so somebody approaches you, or sometimes what we found out doesn't approach you.
Yeah, they just throw your name in.
They put your name there, and you end up being the power of attorney, or you end up being named as an executor or an estate trustee. Mm-hmm. And number one, you may not even know, which was news to me.
Which is actually, when you think about it, like you got to call one day, you're the estate trustee.
Pardon me?
Huh?
Yeah. And number two, if you do know, sometimes you don't even know what that entails. And I think as lawyers and as solicitors that do that work, we explored that with Marissa, that it behooves them to have those appointments with everyone involved.
Yeah. And
to really explain that, what you're signing up for, and to have those discussions with the people you're naming. And we had said it then, and I'll say it again. I would urge you, if you're signing somebody up to be your executor, or at least putting their name in your will in some capacity, or asking them to be a power of attorney, or just telling them they're going to be a power of attorney, that you have the discussion with that person, because there's lots of stuff that flows as a result of those decisions. And when you have, it could lead right down to a substitute decision maker, one of those people you've said as your attorney for health pulling the plug.
Yeah.
That's how important it becomes.
Yep.
You could leave that decision to somebody, that serious decision to somebody you may not even have contemplated. That's what they have the power to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's counsel's responsibility to really outline, those ramifications. And then we discussed, if there is a power of attorney that's been appointed and, they do have a fiduciary duty to that person. And if they're sort of mismanaging funds, then you can challenge a power of attorney. And that's where we spoke to Devin Munch about and how you can litigate these sort of issues, whether you be challenging a will because of some sort of, there's been a dispensing of property that's been, if the estate trustee hasn't been, executing the will properly, you can challenge that. And in the power of attorney, you can challenge that as well. There's different avenues to do that. And then Devin outlined that in his episode.
Yeah. And it was really eye-opening for me to find out that when you challenge these wills and you challenge these powers of attorneys, how complicated the litigation actually can become.
It's quite complicated, and it's an endeavor, especially the will challenge, because the person has deceased and you're dealing with their estate, and then to go through the will and go through any sort of appointment within the will, it can be quite an endeavor, and then it becomes almost quasi-family because you're dealing with sometimes family disputes that sort of go into someone's death, and then it can be really complex and emotional.
I think for Devin's job, I don't envy him because that litigation, ultimately, your primary witness is dead.
That's the best way. Your primary witness is no longer with us.
And so you have to rely on historical medical records. You have to rely on people's word of how that person presented before. And we talked with Devin about a really sensitive case that I thought was really interesting, but difficult because that was the one where the testator wrote a handwritten will, but then committed suicide.
And the note was specifically like a suicide note.
Yes.
But still had the elements of a holograph will.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, did that person have capacity to make... So it posed a lot of great questions.
From a legal perspective,
perspective, and interesting questions, and it answered it in the affirmative. It can be a will.
Yeah. And that suicide note held up in court.
Yeah.
And whatever he wrote in that note was found to be... he had capacity to do that. The presumption was that he had capacity to do that, and ultimately, whatever was written there stood its ground. So, great lesson. I mean, that episode was so enlightening for me because we don't practice in that area, and it touches areas of family law and some of the stuff that we do, but it
has a family element to it because typically it is interfamilial type litigation. You're litigating with other members of your family,
siblings fighting, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, et cetera, always at odds, especially if it's a big estate, right? And ultimately the testator does their best to try to contain the infighting, but once they're gone, and then
that's it.
And then it's free game. The wolves come to feed.
The wolves come to feed. Another one of Deeran's great lines.
I come up with a lot of those.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the next episodes we did 2, and they were about motor vehicle accidents, and this is where it became kind of the Deeran show. No, jokes aside, I will say, as someone who doesn't practice in that area, your 2 episodes were fantastic. I don't want to pump your ego more than it needs to be. But I left those 2 episodes going, I think I can practice personal injury. I won't, but it was explained in a great way, because we the first episode, and if you haven't watched it, I think I implore you should watch every episode. But I implore you to watch these 2, because you took us on the first steps, like the motor vehicle accident happens, and then what to expect on site, what you can do with your insurance company, and the accident benefits you have through that. And the second episode, you actually took us through the litigation and what that entails. And I thought it was quite fascinating. I think our second episode was like, when do I get my money? Because a lot of this litigation can be quite time consuming. It can take years before we get to an end result. But taking it from the statement of claim all the way up to trial, it was great information.
I enjoy that area of my practice too, and that's where I started, right? So when I was a young litigator, all those 7 years ago.
Yeah, the sob story.
I started out doing civil litigation.
Yeah.
And I started taking family law files a couple years into practice and building that side of my practice. But really my true passion lies in the civil litigation field. That's what I really enjoy doing. Now I've learned that I do have a passion for family law, and I really do enjoy that too. And so to be able to put in words the practice of that was really cool for me. It was really eye-opening, and actually, not that I learned more by doing the episode, but it was a nice kind of like a refresher for me to go from start to finish to say, oh yeah, these are the things that I know. These are the things that we do. And you get into an accident, and I think there is a lot of confusion when you get into an accident. It's all overwhelming, right? And you don't know what to do. It's like, oh, I didn't cause this accident. Okay. Immediate concerns. Then secondary concerns, and then, ouch, I'm hurt. Okay, now we got to deal with that. And then, okay, I'm really hurt. Okay, how is this going to impact me? And then to the next stage of where I might not be able to work again. And that progression through that line of thinking and the logic is what we help with, right? Yeah. That's part of our practice. Our clerks do a really good job at making sure our clients get taken care of. The treatment that they have access to is top notch, and refer them to the right places to make sure that our clients are seeing professionals that can help them with all assets or facets of the injury. Whether it be if you need psychological help because you have anxiety driving, that's a real thing, right? Or whether or not you really need rehabilitation, so physio, chiro, etc. Those things, or even just general, counsel to go make sure that you're seeing your family doctor, make sure you're keeping them updated, make sure you're getting the proper medication that you need. And so our clerks do a lot of that behind the scenes work within the accident benefit litigation, and then of course if the real litigation is commenced, then if you watch the episode, you'll see from start to finish, and when do you get money, when do you get paid, what that looks like, the heads of damages,
the types of damages you
get,
That's
important, because the $1 million cases that you hear about in the news are not, they're, I won't say few and far between, but it's not like you can sue somebody. You sue somebody for $1 million, you get $1 million. No, that's not how it works. Those are cases where really it has to deal with a loss of income. So if your ability to earn an income is impacted, then that's when you're really looking at commencing a lawsuit, because general damages are capped by the Supreme Court. They've capped them. And now I think the cap is somewhere, like I said in the episode, about $400,000 in general damages. And that's for the most egregious of cases. But your true uncapped pecuniary loss, which is your loss of income, is where the money is. And so if you are a high income earner, you get into an accident, it impacts your ability to work or will impact your ability to stay in the workforce. That's when you start to look at litigation, because most policy limits are 1 or 2 million, depending on what that person, the other person, has chosen as their liability limit, and you work with that. And so we went through all that, and they're great episodes from an informational standpoint. I think that everybody needs to know that stuff.
I think so too.
Everybody needs to know about the deductible.
Because it's one of those things when you get into a car accident, people say, oh, you exchange information. And then if you were to ask 50 people exchange information, they'd go, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So I think you
or they say, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Or that you go, you probably should.
Probably should, right?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, worthwhile. I think it was definitely
time.
Worthwhile.
And then the topic we tackled after was with another member of our firm, Michael Harrischuk, and it was about criminal law.
One of my favorite episodes today.
I will say, and this is a personal thing, I love speaking to criminal law lawyers about the work they do.
They're so passionate, eh?
Well, it's
like a calling in life.
And Mike, he loves it.
Yeah.
And you can just tell he loves it. And one of his statements during the episode, he said it, and it has stuck with me. You're not defending the actions that the person is alleged of doing. You're defending the person.
Yeah.
And I loved it, because everybody goes like, how can you defend these people? You're going, defending the person. I'm not defending what they have allegedly done. Because if proven, like a lot of these things can be heinous acts. I'm not going, yeah, cool with the heinous acts. I'm defending the person. The person is entitled to a defense, and it's up to the state, the crown, to meet its burden of proof of beyond a reasonable doubt. I love hearing the elements that criminal law lawyers go through to do their jobs, and they're in court all the time, and just the type of practice they have.
I would argue that the criminal lawyers are the best advocates.
I would agree with that
because they spend so much time in court, and the work that they do. You're right. It was really cool to hear him say that, and it really opens your eyes to say, okay, you're protecting somebody's freedom. What your role is you're the gatekeeper to their liberty or to their being incarcerated.
Yep.
And you're not necessarily, it doesn't sometimes, to define the morality of defending somebody who's done a heinous act, you find yourself wondering, okay, could I as a person do that? But when he explains it, it's almost like, oh, I have a duty to do that. And I have a duty to protect that person's constitutional right to freedom.
And also the duty to ensure that if the crown is going to put someone away for a period of time, that they get it right.
Yep.
That the evidence suggests or the evidence proves it, and there is no it's beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the burden. And hearing him discuss that was great.
Well, and it highlights something I was just listening to on the radio about wrongful convictions, and the rate of wrongful convictions is so high, and a lot of them go unreported, and there's just no resources to help them out. I know recently there was a pretty high profile one that was just overturned as a wrongful conviction. It was like 20 years of fighting. The guy went in as like a teenager almost, and comes out as an adult,
Sure.
at 35 years old. And so it highlights the importance of criminal lawyers and their role in society. And Mike did a really good job talking about
he was great.
his role, and the book that he brought up was great.
The Greenspan's book.
The Greenspan book, and just learning from him and seeing the world or the legal world through his lens and through the criminal lens is so great. So again, as Matt said, watch all of them. But the criminal law episode, I think to date, my favorite.
Yeah, it's been my favorite as well.
And so that was our last.
That was last episode until now.
Until now, right?
So let's take a break.
Yep.
Then we'll come back and we'll give you guys a good send off.
This episode of Off the Cuff is brought to you by Weaver Simmons LLP, Northern Ontario's largest full-service law firm with over 30 lawyers and 60 support staff. For over 90 years, the law firm of Weaver Simmons has proudly served the interests of Northern Ontario residents and has built its reputation based on exceptional services to its clients. For more information about the firm, please visit www.weaversimmons.com. The link is provided in the description below.
All right, well, I think that's a wrap on season 1 officially.
Officially done season 1.
Yeah. I'm excited for season 2.
Yeah, so we're going to take a couple of months through the summer because we still have a practice to run, and then we're going to come in with some fresh ideas. But that's what we wanted to sort of touch upon right now. So we picked the topics this season because we just thought they were interesting. But we want to hear from you. So we're going to throw polls up on Instagram and Facebook that you can provide topics that you'd find interesting for us to discuss. You can always throw it in the YouTube section, the comment section of the YouTube videos, or email us on offthecuff@weaversimmons.com. And then just drop us a line. Any topic you think that's remotely interesting that you think we should talk about. The Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial's going on. That's pretty wild. So anything along the lines that you think, I've always wanted to know something about this, or I'm dealing with something similar to this. You can let us know about a topic, and we can, hopefully we can talk about it and make an episode about it.
I think the cool part about season 2, we're going to get out of our comfort zone a little bit. I think we're going to try to get some guests from outside the office.
Yeah, we're going to try, yep.
And we're looking to expand our topics. We're going to do law, but also other things, right? So we're not limited to just legal questions, legal, information. Of course, it is a law podcast, of course, so we're going to do that. But we want to expand and get some other, other views on things that aren't, people that aren't lawyers. And that's where we need your help. So if you, as Matt said, even just, you can call us, you have our information on our website, give us a shout if you want to talk to us. And we're looking forward to expanding the scope of this podcast. It's been a lot of fun this year to learn something. It's
been so much fun.
New. And, the more ideas we get, the better we can be and the more content we can put out for you, the viewers, the listeners. So with that, I think we'll bid you farewell for a few months.
For now.
Yeah. And don't miss us too much because we will be back. I know it's going to be difficult without, our faces on the screen.
Where's Matt and Tyrion?
I know you'll be so upset, but we'll be back. We'll be back.
We're coming.
And, if you ever really need to find us, you know where to find us. You can give us a call and, I don't mind shooting the breeze. So my kid always says that I'm a professional chatter. He thinks that's my job is. So
that's so funny.
I guess, that's where we're at. So, I'm Darren Chohan.
I'm Matt Butler.
And we'll see you next season.